There are tides beneath every tide, and the surface of water holds no weight.
Hello, and welcome to the Legendarium Green Team's Malazan series. Welcome to episode 1 of Midnight Tides. I am BefuddledPanda, and I am joined today by Hurinfan.
Hola.
JasnahAsABoy.
Hi.
And Ashaman.
Hi, guys.
Ashaman and Hurin are the Malazan veterans. I and Jasnah are reading the series for the first time. Today, we are covering Midnight Tides chapters Prologue through 5. Spoiler warning for everything up through these chapters, and we will be using our usual chapter by chapter format. Before we dive into the meat of the episode, listeners don't really know this, but we haven't recorded for like a month. We rushed through House of Chains, got it all recorded, but the release schedule remains the same, and so people don't know we actually haven't been recording. We haven't been together for a month. I got some well-needed rest after reading House of Chains.
I think listeners of our last episode will understand why.
So I'm very excited to be diving into Midnight Tides. I'm expecting this to be a great book based on all the things I've heard.
It's awful.
It's awful.
Don't get your expectations high. It's
lower my expectations. All right. Ashaman, you want to kick us off with the summaries?
Absolutely. Prologue. Father Shadow and Silchus Ruin fight a bunch of scary dinos. Shadow stabs Ruin in the back, and the Eater slaughter the Andi. Mael and Gothos make a deal to preserve the battle in exchange for a favor. Withal from Mekros is commissioned to make a sword by a fallen god.
I love this. This is my favorite prologue. It's not quite as emotional and intense as Deadhouse Gates, but this prologue has everything that I want in a story. It's got betrayal, giant battles, dinosaurs, Gothos, funny line, and then some mysterious stuff at the end with a sword and a little callback to the Mekros city that we found in Midnight Tides. I love it.
Memories of Ice.
Or in Memories of Ice, thank you.
Same thing. Not really.
Sky keeps falling everywhere, on fire, all kinds of stuff.
Dragons that killed the K'chain Shamal matrons.
People turning into dragons and back and forth.
Anomander Rake's brother, who is a spooky albino man. I love Silchus Ruin. He's so cool.
Great name, too.
Yeah.
Oh. So everything y'all have covered, I agree. Very cool, dragons swooping down. I did find the betrayal to be pretty predictable. I don't think it was meant to be like a big twist or anything. It's just the way that I call him Scabby because his name Scambadari, whatever. He's just written in this way that you're like, oh, you're sus. So.
Well, not just him. There's signals all the way up to the betrayal that it's going to happen. Like with the disposition of the armies and how one is so much stronger than the other. And like it keeps highlighting things throughout, like little things.
And the Andi were the ones that were given the dangerous bit of the battle. The Eater had a significantly easier time with it.
Yeah, they came in late.
Although they still lost so many people. Yes, they also came in late, yeah.
Yeah, it was 400,000 Eater or Andi versus 60,000 Kel Hunters.
Yeah.
That's insane, and they were slaughtered.
Yep.
They did a lot better than any other army we've seen so far.
Good point.
Except for the Eye. The Eye were good at it.
Well, they were already undead, so.
Well, yeah,
although they were like undead fighting undead.
Yes, and the Emos lost very many people fighting the Kel Hunters as well.
Yeah. There was a bit of a teaser at the end of the betrayal section where it was like, oh, this is not the greatest mistake that Scabby makes.
Yeah, it was a strange twist of perspective, right? Just kind of took you out of the story and then like just a narrator. Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm very intrigued to find out what that is.
Lots of mysteries.
Yes.
And Scabby thinks that Rake has vanished, never to be seen. We know that's not true, but I wonder why he thought that. The prologue says this is the sundering of Emerlon, so we're kind of seeing what happens when Emerlon just became all these fragments, I guess.
I do wonder. Oh, go ahead.
This, right?
Sorry?
I think it was broken before this, right? Like
I didn't think so.
I think it's happening during the first days of the sundering of Emerlon is what it says.
I see.
So, what were you saying, Banda?
I'm wondering. I mean, this is drawing from, information that we get in later chapters, but also just like having this, knowing that this was the beginning of the sundering of the Warren. If the killing of Scabby was a chaining, because there were elder gods involved, I think. Well, at least Rake was involved, I think. Anyway, that's a speculation.
I have a line from this.
Yeah.
Scabby says, "And I and my followers shall escape the rivening that now besets curled Emerlon. A rivening by your own hand, Scavandary." So he broke Emerlon and then got out of there. And then did some betrayals.
He's good at it. He's got lots of practice.
Yeah. Yeah, he mentions betraying someone else too in the prologue, I believe, right?
I don't remember that.
Keep in mind, we do have a very anti-Scabby narrator for this first section, so I like how we're just kind of all calling him Scabby. I think I'll continue doing that.
I think Scabby is a good nickname for him. We also see a god that we have heard of, but never talked with before, Mael. What do you guys think of Mael so far?
I think that he thinks too highly of himself. That's all.
Why is that?
I don't know. He's like, I've got my reasons for why I want to preserve this battle. And, what are you going to do? You're just going to use your ice magic? Well, yes.
I wonder about him because he's an elder god. And so far we've been led to believe there's only 3 of those left, but in the present tense, we've got the Gistal priest and other followers of Mael still kicking around. So
that's a good point.
I have only one quote from the prologue, but I want to share it now. "Gothos," Mael rasped. "What ritual do you invoke in answer to this?" The Jaghut scowled. "They've made a mess. I mean to cleanse it." "Ice," the Elder Guard snorted. The Jaghut answered to everything. "And what would yours be, Mael? Blood or flood?"
Yes.
Like, hey, you use what you got.
I was just earlier this week reading Steven Eriksson's response to fan questions about Midnight Tides. And in it, he mentioned that the original function of the Jaghut was to put glaciers where there shouldn't have been glaciers. So the ice was the first thing about them.
Okay, something that I was thinking about, because, Eriksson has said several times, like, he wrote these stories to entertain Cam, and, Cam did the same back. While that is really cool, and, like, it's a really nice thing that they can do with each other, it does, for me, present a bit of a challenge when I read Malazan, because, like, the tone of Malazan, for the most part, is pretty serious. Like, it tackles really serious issues and theming, and, obviously there's a lot of violence, and so sometimes the humor that occurs because of their gaming or them trying to get each other to laugh, it doesn't quite jive with my mental model of Malazan. And so I either, like, don't quite pick up the humor, or I just don't find it that funny, right? And I'm like, it's falling flat. So that's just something that I've noticed after reading, more than 4 books. But when they do land, when the humor does land, like, it is really funny. So I guess, I'll take that.
You seem to enjoy the soldiers' humor a lot, right?
Yes.
The really dark stuff.
So
Yes.
you just gotta read the novella series so you can get like pure black comedy at no seriousness at all.
It's really dark.
Well, it's not that I don't want the seriousness. It's more like sometimes the humor just seems so disjointed from the tone of Malazan. You know, like,
Isn't the humor part of the tone though?
but that's the thing is that sometimes it's weaved in really well. And we've talked about, some of those moments in like Memories of Ice and Dead House Gates. But then there are like really silly things or names that they give characters, and you're just like, hold on a second. It gives me a little bit of whiplash because it's such a switch in tone.
What name were you thinking of when you said that?
I think you know which one. Pung. Like,
you don't like that name?
you're
It's an amazing name.
It's not that I don't like it. It's just that it gave me a bit of a whiplash. Like, oh, okay, right. They're
I didn't
writing
even
these-
read that name as humorous when I read it. I just
Really?
I didn't even think of it as being an attempt at humor. I was just like, "Oopla, cool. Let's just keep going."
I mean, I don't know if it's like actual names from a language that I'm not familiar with. So if it is, I apologize.
Though I
Wait,
did know that
Ublala is a joke.
What?
Ublala's name is a joke.
I have no idea. It's
Okay.
It's funny sounding.
It is
Yes.
funny sounding.
the character's quite funny. There's a lot of body comedy associated with the
Yes.
characters.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's what grabbed me in that scene was the
Yeah. Sorry, we jumped. We
We can
jumped
talk about that
ahead.
later.
Anyway.
Should we go to chapter 1?
Yes.
Sure. Chapter 1. Troll Sengar sees the slaughter of their seals by the Letheri, breaking a pact between the two peoples. Teist Eater were recently united under Han and Mosag. Udinus, a slave, gets bitten by a wyval while trying to save his love, a lovely woman named Feather Witch. As a result, he becomes possessed by the wyval.
Is it
Udinus?
Wyval or Weevil?
I don't think it's Weevil.
No.
I think there's a case to be made that it's Udinas, not Udinus. But
Well, that's how Erickson pronounces it, right?
pronounces it Udinas? Okay. I will switch my pronunciation.
I believe it's Udinas. I mean, he said the name in our interview.
Which I didn't know who that character was, and now I do. Yay!
Now you do. He's a very polarizing character.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
He's very
He's very bitter.
bitter and cynical.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like him. I love the way he thinks and
He's
his
so-
thoughts. And okay, so the beginning of this chapter is really, really, really beautifully written, and it feels more like a poem, and I don't understand it.
same.
So, like, it talks about the march of time, how a giant became a mountain, and he was taken by the sea and whittled down and turned into rock, and then like the gift of Father Light is being able to see it anyway if you only look away.
Mm-hmm.
Any
Father
ideas? Did I say Father? Yeah, Father Shadow.
Is it?
Mhm.
I just read it as like a myth about a mountain, like, and if you squint at the mountain real hard, you see the giant it supposedly used to be.
I feel like I'm gonna have to read it again and
I've read it
think about it.
at least twice, and I couldn't get anything more out of it than that.
It's really pretty. I like it a lot, but
It is.
I don't understand the meaning.
Yeah, whatever the myth is supposed to be about, besides the fact that if you squint at this mountain, it looks like a giant. I don't know. I'm sure there might be some symbolism there, but I just took this as like a kind of folklorish, like the way that like our mountain is named Buffalo Mountain. And
Yeah, but doesn't it feel more like an epigraph than like the beginning of a chapter?
yeah.
It
totally.
feels like setting up the themes of the book to me.
Exactly like the epigraphs do.
Yeah. Like
What
this is going to
would be
It feels like Erickson is saying this is not going to be an easy story to have clear lines on. Like from the first book, it's very hard to tell if there are good guys and bad guys here, right? Like more so even than the other books, because there are very heroic and very villainous characters on both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because certainly the Letheri are not very good, and the Eater are also equally as bad. So
Yeah.
They're just not good either.
I guess it's also just like what you see on the surface may not necessarily be what's there. I don't know.
Yeah, you
Like,
have to take a very you can't look too hard,
mhm,
but you have to look differently. You have to shift your perspective.
right. Okay.
We're also introduced to the owl. There's an owl here, and it shows up again.
Along with the white crow.
Mm-hmm.
The
What's
white
up with the
crow.
owl and that white crow?
The white crow symbolism is pretty interesting, because the owl doesn't make a reappearance later on in these chapters that we read, but the crow does.
The owl makes a reappearance. Yes, it does. Yep.
They both do.
Oh, does it?
It appears with the white crow.
Oh,
yeah.
with the crow chasing or flying behind
You
it.
know,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
all those mice
In
as well.
chapter 5.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
After
But
yeah.
So I was curious about like the symbolism of the white crow, and it seems that there's an interpretation of it that it represents justice, which I'm not quite sure yet how that would if that fits in this book.
Something to keep your eye on.
Yeah.
Let's see my notes.
I love our
So-
introduction to Trull in this book.
What do
he
you
sees
like about
something
it?
he should not have seen,
Uh-huh.
which is a theme for Trull. Poor guy. And I don't know. I just think he's cool how he manages to run for like 3 days and 2 nights without stopping, essentially. And when I first read this, I had no idea what I was going to think of him. This to me felt very much like an introduction to the character, because this is the character before House of Chains, right? So there's a lot of development that has taken place between now and then.
What does Udinas see in Feather Witch?
She's pretty.
It's kind of shallow.
I mean, he wouldn't be the first man to be shallow about women. I also think he's attracted to the sight that she has, because Udinas is also a person who sees things that others don't. Except for, of course, it's in a very different way. Than
So
Feather
mean
Witch.
though.
She is so mean. But he hadn't gotten really a chance to interact with that yet.
Yeah. But later on, she's really mean to him.
Mm-hmm.
I really like her name, Feather Witch.
Does she do a tile reading in this chapter?
Yes,
Yeah.
because that's when the Weevil. I
Weevil.
in my head it's Weevil.
I'm gonna
Aren't
say
weevils
Weevil.
like little bugs that eat
Yes.
grain and stuff? Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna say Weevil. I was calling it
Um,
Weevil before today, though.
I
Or
don't
Wibble,
know.
actually.
Wivel, whatever. That word.
I think Wyvil is correct because wyvern.
Mm.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I'm pretty sure
Weevil.
Weevil's correct because it sounds funny.
I will try to correct my pronunciation.
Hurin will not.
I will continually say Weevil. Go ahead, Panda.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
You
Oh.
said it was the tile reading because the Weevil.
Yeah, like Udanas was running to try to warn her, like, hey, don't do your thing. Right.
He saw the omen, yeah.
Yeah.
Tiles are weird. Do you have any thoughts about the tiles, Panda Yasa?
I
So
don't
they're
know.
just like the deck of dragons, but for holds, because there's not wards
Yeah.
yet.
Essentially.
That's a good
Although,
way of thinking of it.
if you pay attention, the Eater talk about their warden. The Letheri don't have a concept of warrens yet. They just have a concept of holds.
So the Eater have a concept of warrens before the humans do?
They have a concept of at least Curled Emerlon being a warren, because they mention the word warren from time to time, and they don't refer to it as a hold.
And not all humans, really just the Letheri.
Mm-hmm.
How long before the events that we've seen in the rest of the books is this supposed to be? Or do
Not
we
very
know?
long.
I believe
Not
this
very
takes
long.
place in between the prologue of Gardens of the Moon and the first chapter of Gardens of the Moon.
Yeah,
That's not long.
it's not.
It's
long.
not long.
So how do the Letheri not have a concept of warrens?
Would you like to know?
Not if it's a spoiler.
I honestly don't know if it's a spoiler or not.
It is. Don't say it.
Okay.
You let them piece it together, man.
Yes, there is a reason.
I think it's interesting that like seeing the way that Troll is represented in this book, and continuing to keep your eye on it. If you keep in mind that somebody put this in the Book of the Fallen, like some historian or scribe who's compiling this book called the Book of the Fallen, and it's like their like edited or transcribed version of the story Troll is telling the IMAS at the end of House of Chains. And he was originally going to leave himself out of the story. So you don't know how much of this is Troll's view of himself, or how much of it like historians went and like reinserted him or like tweaked his representation to be the way it is in Midnight Tides when they were compiling. I don't know, it's just interesting. I mean, and the same for all the characters, but especially Troll, because he's the one that originally told the story, at least, and then he also didn't want to talk about himself in it. Mm-hmm. And here he is as one of the viewpoint characters.
Mm-hmm.
He serves a very interesting role in this story that I won't go into on this episode, but at the conclusion, I probably can.
Okay.
This reading, I'm trying my hardest to like Troll more.
Did you not like him at first?
It's not that I disliked him. It's just like he's a fan favorite, and I was just like, yeah, he's okay.
I have to admit, all the Sengars, I'm like, I don't have any particular affection for them. The Bedics, I guess that's how I pronounce them. They're more entertaining and likable for me.
They're very charismatic, the Bedics.
Yeah.
Hole too?
Hmm?
Hole's a sad boy.
I'd say he's still charismatic. He's just like a broken kind of charismatic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, I can't leave this out. Come on. Troll, meaning prostitute. Like, I really want to know if Erickson did that on purpose or not.
I can only imagine that he did.
He probably knows it, yeah.
I would be surprised if he didn't. So that also makes me question, like, okay, this Troll Sengar character, like, what is he really?
He's really attractive.
Okay.
Long, flowing locks. Nice
You
forehead,
go.
unscarred.
Oh, while we're on the topic of names, how do you say Rhulad?
Rulad.
Okay. Don't you think of, like, the rolled meat or rolled pastries when you say that?
Oh, hey. I hadn't thought of that.
What?
Roulade.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Roulade is a dish. I think it's like a German dish, or anyway, there's a version of it in Germany, where it's rolled meats, or like Swiss rolls, cake. You know, it's
Looks like
roulade.
meat.
It's like rolled anyway. So
okay,
it made me hungry.
How much
honestly,
do you guys hate roulade at the start?
I don't.
Oh, I couldn't stand him.
Yeah, I don't like
honestly,
him.
in these first 6 chapters, Roulette is the Sengar brother that I
5 chapters.
I don't know, like the most. Sorry, 5 chapters.
Well,
I don't know. I think he's kind of pathetic, and I'm just like, oh man, I feel bad for you.
I don't feel bad.
He's like a mean crocus.
Yeah.
Is he that mean?
I think so. Okay, maybe he's not mean. He's just completely unaware that he has an insufferable manner about him.
He's brash.
He's very whiny.
He's brash and whiny, and he's trying to sleep with his brother's wife or fiance or whatever.
He's just strutting.
Yeah.
Which is a good word for it.
And his brothers are very in mostly a nice way, being like,
well,
stop this.
Troll.
No one likes it when you do this.
It's making Fear uncomfortable that Troll keeps doing.
But see, that's the question. Was Fear Fear must have observed this behavior from Roulade, right? But he doesn't say anything about it. He doesn't do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if he thinks that Troll is saying and doing stuff about it is kind of usurping his place, and also might be because Troll has feelings for her and is projecting basically. I
have an opinion. I think Fear sees it as nothing because he doesn't have any reason not to trust man, and Rulad's just being a little brother, right? But he thinks that by, admonishing
out.
Rulad, and by pointing it out, he gives credence to the idea, and that's what
Mhm.
makes him uncomfortable.
That makes sense.
Like Fear is just so confident in either himself or his fiance that he's like, yeah, this is nothing.
What's the big deal? Because
I think
like
he's
he literally
also-
says, who are when you say these things to Rulad, who are you actually saying them to? Are you saying to the Rulad, or are you saying them to Mayan?
Okay, I
I think
see.
he's also more willing to give Rulad the benefit of the doubt than Trell is.
Yeah, good point.
He's brat. I don't like him.
What do you guys think of the tile reading?
Confusing.
What like the specific one in chapter 1?
Yes.
Well, wait, was this the one with Sita or no?
No, this is the one that Feather Witch does.
Okay, the Feather Witch.
Is this
know.
the one where they're like talking about there's no one upon Bone Perch, chaos hones every weapon, and the killing goes on, and from the maelstrom powerful creatures arise, and the slaying reaches beyond measure? Is that it?
I think so.
And it
And
ends
talking
by
about the
talking about the
dolmens
hold
and the
of
dragons.
the Azath.
I believe so.
Yeah. The errant returns and casts the seed into blood-soaked earth. Thus rises the hold of the Azath.
No idea.
Yeah.
It seems portentous, no?
Sure.
Yeah, it felt like, to me, especially my first read, or even through the year, it felt just like a way to introduce the idea of the tiles and how they're different from the deck of dragons, and to be portentous and ominous. Be like, I'll understand this later, maybe.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, so do the tiles only read the holds and like the elder stuff?
Yeah, the tiles are for the holds, yeah.
So does the deck of dragons not read anything up, like anything from the holds? Is it only
I believe the deck of
human
dragons
warrens?
is for the warrens and the tiles are for the holds, but it's probably not that simple.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated.
Yeah,
than
I was
that.
gonna say, like, if you wanted to read both, would you need like tiles and a deck?
Probably.
Make it hard to shuffle.
It's like mixing mahjong and poker.
I didn't mean in one thing. I meant like, would you have to learn to read one and the other?
What do you guys think of the concept of the empty hold and that being the object of Letheri worship?
I think we should talk about that in a later chapter.
Maybe. We can do that.
We haven't even been introduced to the Letheria yet, so.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're introduced
Letheria
to,
in
the
Lether.
slaves. Yes.
Oh, which is something else to point out. So there are 20,000 Eater in the city and 60,000 slaves. How insane is that?
Mm-hmm.
Just built on slavery.
That's what comes with civilization, eh? We also get a strong implication that Feather Witch is quite powerful in this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
When Uruth says, well, she can't be hiding anything, and if she was, she would be much more powerful than I am.
Right.
So keep an eye on her.
We keep hearing or seeing this word, the errant.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like the ones who forge the holds, so we're told. And I keep thinking about the nameless ones, if they're related.
When were we told that the errant are the ones that forged the holds? Because I couldn't figure out what the errant was supposed to be.
It's on page 44.
One thing, the errant is one person.
Oh, it's a one person?
Or god, or whatever you want to just call it.
Being.
Okay. Yeah, it says the errant would then weave its mysterious skein. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong too. Forging the holds themselves. But it says themselves.
I think it's an attempt to make it gender neutral.
Okay. Oh, I see.
Mhm.
Ice, Elaint, Azath, Beast, and into their midst would emerge the remaining Fulcra. Axe, Knuckles, Blade, the Pack, Shapefinder, and White Crow.
There's White Crow again.
The ones we don't know.
Okay, well, I mean, that answers the question then. The errant isn't the nameless ones. But
It could be related, though. I mean,
they could be related.
The Azath
Yeah. Also, errant has two definitions. Like one meaning, to stray from like standards and proper course. And then the other one is traveling in search of adventure. It's like I was not familiar with the second definition. And I'm just like, why did Erickson name it the errant? I mean, to me, based on the theming, it seems like the straying from proper course would make sense for this meaning. But I don't know. They also created the hold of the Azath, so it's not. I feel like they're not necessarily bad, or maybe the Azath are bad. I don't know.
Maybe they are.
Maybe. It's really really hard to tell, eh?
So should we move on to quotes, or does anyone have anything else?
Quotes is good.
This is my favorite. I only have one from this chapter. Udinas well understood his own kind. To the Letheri, gold was all that mattered. Gold and its possession defined their entire world. Power, status, self-worth, and respect all were commodities that could be purchased by coin. Indeed, debt bound the entire kingdom, defining every relationship. The motivation casting the shadow of every act, every decision. This devious hunting of the seals was the opening play and a ploy to the Letheri had used countless times. Against every tribe beyond the borderlands, to the Letheri, the Eater were no different, but they are. You fools. Do you think
I
the
marked that
Eater are
too.
different?
Probably not. I mean, they may not say the words like gold, but they put a lot of emphasis on the seals, and it's a main source of, I don't know if income is the right word, but
I would say the seals are kind of just necessary for them to live because of, furs and meat and blubber for lambs and such.
yeah.
Yeah, it's heavily implied, I think, by Udinas in the first chapter that without the seal product, the slaves will be the first to suffer from resulting famine.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Yeah.
And we learn in a later chapter that the burial ritual for the Eater involves a lot of gold.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Oh,
the
yeah,
only
that's
time
right, the
they use
coins.
it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The coins. Which that part, I mean, I think Erickson was indulging a bit in his anthropology roots. I found it kind of boring.
He does get really kind of indulgent when it comes to anthropology.
I mean, sometimes
I thought it was
don't
interesting,
mind.
but
I think the notion of sheathing a corpse in gold and that being the only use you have for it tells you a lot about how they think about the world and their ideas about currency and stuff like that.
I still think it was boring.
It's fine if you think it's boring. There was a purpose to it. It wasn't just him being like, I'm gonna make this culture weird. Chapter 2. Serenpedek and Baruch the Pale travel to the Eater lands for a great meeting between Letheri and Eater. Hull-Bedict, betrayed by the Letheri and betrayer of everyone else, joins them. Shirtless Tehul-Bedict and his servant do funny stuff. Bryce-Bedict teaches us about court intrigue. Tehul gets roped into destroying the Letheri economy by people wanting revenge.
in case you can't tell, listeners, I was the one who wrote the chapter summaries this time on a tight time budget.
I shirked my duties to my great
Shirked.
chagrin.
Ooh, nice.
That was my word of the day.
No one has anything to say?
Yeah, I think we just move on to chapter 3.
Nothing to talk about here.
No, I can start. I love T-hole and Bug. I know,
Yes.
shocking. Such a
It is the
shocker.
correct opinion.
It's a very controversial opinion.
So controversial. Can I just have more of them, please?
Yes.
Yeah. Don't worry.
Okay.
There's going to be more.
Good.
They're awesome.
I said this before we recorded, but Tehil is my favorite character in the entire series, rivaling Karsa. I kind of flounder, but I love Tehil.
Interesting. I mean,
No.
right now, if I had to pick between those two, I'd pick Tehol, hands down.
Well, that's all.
Thanks.
Karsa lacks humor that Tehil has. But everybody lacks humor that Tehil has.
Yeah.
And I just love his relationship with Bug too. It's so pretty.
I know.
They're so
There's-
cute.
Yeah. They're so familiar with each other, and it's got, I mean, even later on you see this more. It's got like a Monty Python-esque feel to how they speak to each other.
Mhm.
And yes. They're the sunshine for me right now in this book.
I love Bug's attempts to provide Tehil with clothes.
Yeah. Do you want it really short, or do you just want one leg?
One leg, yeah. How short would it be? Quite short. Make
Go with the one leg. We need to get some food. Would you like something better when cooked or something that has to be cooked? Either way is fine. How about wood? I'm not eating!
Look at that stool you're sitting on. It doesn't really need all 3 legs, does it? When scrounging doesn't pay, it's time to improvise.
And then later he's going down the ladder and he notices that every 1 in 3 rungs are missing.
No, only every 1 in 3 rungs there.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's comedy right there. Like
I
this,
love it.
there are not very many books that make me laugh out loud. These exchanges make me laugh out loud.
You need to read more funny books. I think that's the takeaway here.
Okay. What's the funniest book you know, besides
That's-
Stephen Erickson's Book of the Fallen? Naturally.
Well, you should read, and this is nonfiction. You should read something by Jenny Lawson. She is very funny.
Jenny Lawson. Very
Yes,
funny.
while tackling very heavy topics,
Put that in
like
my notes.
mental illness, depression. Yeah.
Ooh, sounds like something up my alley.
I think Joe Abercrombie's books are pretty dang funny. I laugh out all the time. I really like the super funny stuff contrasted against the dark, like awful stuff. So I like Erickson, I like Abercrombie. I like that clash.
Yeah.
I've made this reference like way too many times by now, but this is I feel almost directly lifted from Hamlet, in Erickson's works at least, because if anyone knows Hamlet, then they know like it flip flops between serious and comedic like multiple times every scene.
It's so funny. I
Like
laugh
Hamlet-
out loud when I'm watching Hamlet every time.
Hamlet bursts into his mother's room and just kind of stabs the curtain because he thinks there's a spy there, killing one of the most pathetic characters in fiction, Polonius, who says, "I am slain," as he dies. And then almost immediately after, it switches back to serious because Hamlet's just having a breakdown at the moment. And of course his mother's like, "Why did you just stab Polonius? Why was Polonius there?"
in Brana's Hamlet, the "I am slain" doesn't come off as funny. It comes off as serious, but there are plenty of funny scenes even in that rendition.
In whose Hamlet?
Brana's.
Kenneth
Branagh.
I've never read the play. I've only watched people perform it. And the one I watch over and over and over again is Kenneth Branagh's. And it doesn't read as funny in that scene when he says, "I am slain."
Yeah,
but
really
when you
depends on
just said it was funny.
actors. Yeah. When I watched it at the Stratford Festival, it was the guy who was playing Polonius was so hilarious. One time he forgot his lines and he managed to work that into the story.
I do wonder if Branagh's portrayal of Gilderoy Lockhart is a bit modeled after Hamlet. A little bit.
Hamlet's such a drama queen. I love him.
Well, anyway, so we went off topic. I'll bring it back.
Thank you.
And change the tone. Hull is such a sad character.
Oh, right.
That poor man, dude, whatever.
Yep.
Eater, no, Lithari.
Yeah.
Like I feel for the dude, but he's just not fun to be around.
Which is why he's separate. Well, it's one reason why I think he separated himself from everyone else.
That could be it, yeah.
Because, he would just be a downer. And I would say rightfully so. His entire life's work was subverted against him in possibly the cruelest way possible.
But he's not like just not doing anything, right? He is gonna take action, and
Start a
we'll
war.
see what comes out of it. Yeah, I mean,
Let's talk about the other the other Bedek brother, Briz. I like Briz a lot, but he's a lot more serious and less fun.
Yeah.
But his I really like learning about the court intrigue from him, and he is most definitely a badass.
Mm-hmm. He's also, I think, one of the straight men in the book. Not in terms of sexuality, in terms of character role.
he got his sword out very quietly before
Before the other guy got it out of the scabbard.
Yeah.
That was a tense scene.
And this is the chapter we got the tile reading from Sita, which is cool. Sita seems like an interesting guy.
The Sita is not. I don't know, man.
He's not all there.
Yeah, But I don't really know what to make of the character yet.
To me, it seems like he's definitely on the spectrum. He definitely seems very autistic to me. Not in a derogatory way, by the way. I really like his habit of assigning importance or non-importance to everything that comes up. So he says, oh, this is going on, important. That thing that's going on, not important.
He's like verbally triaging information.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good.
Except, well, I mean, not except, but there is a part where he goes, oh, this detail is not important yet. And I'm like, okay, gonna note that.
I gotta go back and look at that. I like that he invented eyeglasses.
Yeah, he was pretty blind before, but now he sees.
Yeah, like looking at the hole made him lose his sight. I didn't really understand that part.
I assumed it was just kind of like looking at the sun. It just damaged his eyes.
So the empty hole is the sun?
No, but like, that's a similar phenomenon.
Okay.
Looking at great power can blind you.
So what is the empty hole?
It's what the Lothari worship.
It's not real.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that. Is it real?
It could be real. It's most certainly a
is
metaphor.
Real. Yeah.
Shall we talk about the empty hole now then?
What is the metaphor then?
Greed, gold, the pursuit of which it's something which everyone could strive for. That's empty, so they feel that they have a chance to attain it.
So I'm going to get a little bit spicy here and reference the Communist Manifesto, which I have studied this past semester in school. In it, Karl Marx makes the point that capitalism effectively strips away all the illusions that get in the way of wealth creation, leaving only the brutal truth that they're just out for money. To me, this felt very much like that.
Yeah, he talks about how it strips away all the like sacredness to like relationships, to family, to priesthood, doctors, etc., and replaces all those ties with callous cash payment. That's the part you're talking about, right?
Yes, essentially.
And by he, it's they, because there's two authors. But yeah.
Yes. And also, if you have no official god, guess what? You can justify anything. So it's not just about capitalism, of course, but like there are multiple ways to interpret this.
You could put anything on a pedestal, make it say what you want.
Mm-hmm. Which is an interesting contrast, I think, to the Taistliosen.
Because they pretend that they think that there is a god there, and instead it's something else.
They idolize something without knowing its true nature at all, and they just kind of project their beliefs onto that. So in a way, the Lothari are at least more honest with themselves.
I have a good quote about this. Obviously, this isn't what I'll just read it. The Lothari way of life was hard, but it was the true way, the way of civilization. The proof was found in its thriving, where other ways stumbled remained weak and stilted. So it's this kind of idea that because you're thriving, it just means it's the right way. It's like you're doing well. Rich people are doing well, so that must mean that they are virtuous, right?
Very social Darwinist of them.
Yes. Which is kind of interesting where like the Lothari are so progressive, but there are things in the world that they don't really know about. I guess, because they don't mention the warrants, what you guys were talking about before. Like, do they like actively reject it and therefore it's just like not mentioned in their society? Perhaps.
My eyebrows are moving. Anyone else notes? I got some more quotes.
I do as well.
We have a introduction into what Tehil's goal will be, at least for the present.
Is it really Tehil's goal or the goal of the people who hired Tehil?
Oh well. He's going to do some economic damage. And we haven't seen this kind of thing before from Steve. He hasn't really dealt with economies before, as far as I know.
Not in this way.
No, and not so directly.
He's had characters comment on like the social relationships in a given economy.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had Tarsad comment on like agrarian society, and he had like, people comment on Darujistan's economy, but it wasn't like oh, we're gonna have a speculator character that's gonna like bet certain ways to try to topple a market, things like that.
I like how far Tehol is willing to go to try and sell the story of him being broke.
Yeah.
Everybody knows he's the man that sleeps on his roof.
Yeah. And exactly one person so far we know has figured it out. And these 3 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too because like at what point is he planning on taking advantage of the fact that he's not broke? He could spend his whole life, pretending to be broke and crazy and then just die on the rooftop. And what good is it that he's not
like,
broke?
what is his end game? Yeah. I don't know.
Another inspiration for Tehel, I think, would be Diogenes. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the... an ancient Greek philosopher whose tale has definitely grown in the telling, who is ideologically opposed to having any sort of possessions whatsoever. For a while, he had a bowl that he used to drink water and to eat with. But then he saw next to him, when he was drinking from the fountain, a child using just their hands. So he threw away his bowl. He has a lot of very funny stories about him. For example, Aristotle famously defined man as featherless biped. So he allegedly burst into the debating hall one day and held out a plucked chicken. He says, "Behold, man!"
Oh dear.
Is that the guy who has the quote, "In a rich man's house, the only place to spit in is in his face"?
I don't know. Maybe. He also has some legendary encounters with Alexander the Great. Like, Alexander the Great is like, "I've heard of you, Diogenes. Is there anything I can do for you?" And he's like, "Get out of my face."
Is that just a legend, or did they live during the same time?
So it's really hard to tell in ancient history what you can attribute to who. Diogenes especially so, because he just lived on the street, But we are pretty confident that there was a guy named Diogenes, and he did live on the street, and he did philosophize.
Okay. I thought it was the scene where Tehel was talking with the 3 ladies, and they're like, "You're going to do this, or else Hull is going to be very upset." And he says, "My brother doesn't have any idea." I thought that was a nice revelation.
Yeah, so basically, Tehol used the money that he gained from his previous scheme to buy a bunch of islands.
So he could right the wrong that the Leferi did on because of Hull.
Those tribes can go seek refuge.
Although that's not all he did with it. In these chapters, it's mentioned that he had enemies, and he made them his business partners.
Oh, right. And they committed suicide.
Yeah.
I have a quote from Hull to Serene, whichever. "This is the curse, then, that we are so inclined to look ahead, ever ahead, as if the path before us should be any different from the one behind us." And then Hull thinks to himself, "Aye, and it pays to remind me every time I glance back. I really should stop doing that." And then, I think a little later on, he also said, never mind, just kidding. But yeah, this is another way to say history repeats itself, which then, it really kind of begs the question of free will.
You all know my position on that one.
I don't know if I really want to get into it, but it's more just it's just right there. I cannot not acknowledge that the question is there.
Mm-hmm. Erickson really likes to ask that question in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get it, Steve.
Yeah, so I had 2 quotes. So one is from the Sita's reading, and I just thought, so the Sita smiled because the Fanad just said, "Oh, it was 70,000 years." And he says, language changes over time, meaning twists. Mistakes compound with each other transcribing. Even those stalwart sentinels of perfection, numbers, can in a single careless moment be profoundly altered. Shall I tell you my belief, Finod? What would you say to my notion that some zeros were dropped at the beginning of the 7th closure? So like this event that they thought was like 70 or 7,000 years ago, was 70 or 700,000 years ago.
7 million, 700 million.
Anything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of wild for the theory, but also like, more of Steve poking at historians trying to nail down dates and stuff the way he does.
Oh man, it's so hard to get dates right in history.
And then the other one's a little before that, and they're talking about. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I like that Steve mentions. I don't think Steve does a great job with language, but he mentions like how much a language can change over that much time. It doesn't change nearly as much as he says, but it should actually be a lot more different.
I can't keep up with the slang that happens, especially nowadays with the fusion that happens from different cultures and just like different dialects. This is me saying I'm old.
And the internet too, it's just always creating new things that we can't keep up with.
Those kids and their TikToks.
I have multiple Tehillim bugs, but I'm gonna whittle it down some more and only share one.
Okay.
Bug. How do you manage to keep those muscles when you do nothing? Baffles me, he said. A Vedic trait, my dear sad minion of mine. You should see Briz under all that armor, but even he looks scrawny when compared to Hull. As a middle son, I of course represent the perfect balance, wit, physical prowess, and a multitude of talents to match my natural grace. When combined with the extraordinary ability to waste it all, you see standing before you the exquisite culmination. A fine and pathetic speech, Bug said with a nod.
Oh my god.
I also get a heavy Greek vibe from the Benedict brothers.
Mm.
They all have a trait that they really excel in.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a double-edged sword for all of them.
Yeah, to me, they are more distinct of characters than the Sengar brothers.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Other than I know that I hate one a bit more than the others.
Does anyone else get a real Marty and Doc Brown vibe from Briss and Sita Kurokwon? Because I do.
Oh, now that you
say that,
yeah,
I was getting more like a kind of the crazier like depiction of Merlin.
I mean, that's Doc Brown, right?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah,
Doc Brown.
Yeah, that is Doc Brown. You're right. I just realized when you read that quote that T-Hole reminds me of my friend Chris, who will never ever listen to the show because he doesn't read, but he has that same style of humor and is like so self-deprecating and seems like such a clown. And now that like you read that quote, it made me realize like he's also now a speculator. Like he works for a living, but the way he's paying for his house is by buying trading cards at prices that are way lower than they should be and flipping them. And he's like buying a house that way. So he's not crashing economies speculating. But it's buy low, sell high,
Is he buying magic cards?
I think it's mainly not magic. I think he does deal with that, but there's this new game. I think it's called like Fire and Blood or something.
Oh, there's Flesh and Blood. I think it is.
Yeah, that and the MSRP on the booster packs is like way lower than they actually sell.
Wow.
And he found a shop that sells them at the MSRP still and won't ever sell them for more than that. So he just buys them and like flips them.
Dang.
And he's like buying a house. He bought a car that way.
Is he that guy that used GameStop as a bank?
he would not shut up about that when that was happening. I don't think he did it though. But
my wife buys stock, and she was talking for weeks, like, "Oh, I wish I bought GameStop."
Oh, I mean that's the thing about the stock market is like it's always going to be hindsight is 2020.
Yeah, just buy low, sell high. Easy.
Speaking of the stock market, I have a quote here from T-hole to Shand. Even when money's just an idea, it has power. Only it's not real power, just the promise of power. But that promise is enough so long as everyone keeps pretending it's real. Stop pretending and it all falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
I love that quote. It's so on point. And it's also like, especially now as we get into cryptocurrencies, like we're getting so abstract.
Yeah.
I mean, derivatives are pretty abstract too, and I think that
Yes.
Steve wrote this before the 2007 crash, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
this was published in 2005. If I
Oh,
remember
wow.
correctly.
You forgot to
Mhm.
mention the diamond hands part of that.
Yes,
quote.
he mentioned
You can continue with that part if you would like.
No, it's fine. He says unless you've got diamonds in your hands, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Diamond hands.
Yeah, I for one can't let myself think about money too long, or else I just get really wigged out because it's such a weird concept.
So the other quote was about the Neric, and it's like the tribe that, before kneeling to the Letheri king, had dwelt in the range's easternmost reach, believed that they were the children of a woman and a serpent, and that the serpent dwelt still within the body, that gently curved spine, the stacked knuckles reaching up to hide its head in the center of the brain. But the mountains despised that serpent, desired only to drag it back to the ground, to return it once more to its belly, slithering in the cracks and coiled beneath rock. And so, in the course of a life, the serpent was made to bow, to bend, and twist. So, it's like a myth about our aging process and how we get all bent at the end. It's just because the mountain wants to break the serpent inside of it.
This is the bit where I think he goes a bit too indulgent on anthropology.
I loved it.
I like it too.
I think there are multiple times in each book where we could be like, "Yeah, aren't you a little being indulgent?"
But this is shorter than the whole burial ritual. But the
It is.
joke with anthropologists is like they just go way deep into burial rituals and death in different cultures, right? And so many papers are written about it. Sorry to any anthropologists listening. I love you.
Anthropologists, yeah, we appreciate you. You do very good work.
Which I'm gonna
I
feature
can't
an
stand 'em.
anthropologist. Shut up, Aaron. I'm gonna feature an anthropologist later when I bring up things about debt. There is an imagery that happens later in the chapter, and it's I'll just read the quote. Saren stared down. The valley stretched below, its steep sides unrelieved forest, a deep, motionless green. The glitter of rushing water threaded through the shadows in the cuts nadir. Blood of the mountains. The Eater called that river. Tisforundel? Maybe. Its waters ran red with the sweat of iron. And when I was reading this in this chapter for the first time, I was like, that imagery is very vivid in my mind. But with information that we get later on in these chapters, then I came back and I was like, wait, is that a river of blood? From like the melting ice.
It very well could be.
And because it also says its waters ran red with the sweat of iron, and blood is made of iron.
It has iron in it, yeah.
Yes, it has iron.
That reminds me of something I wanted to bring up. In the prologue, Scabandary was
Gabby.
Scabby was thinking about, we Eater, we're just gonna overrun this world. Like all the other races are gone, and we're the only ones that know how to work iron. And in the history of the Eater, we know now that they lost the secret of iron forging, and also even now they're not as good at it as the Letheri are. So Scabby is not very prescient at all. Very bad at predicting things. Chapter 3. The Eater watch Hen and Mosag unleash strange sorcery on the Letheri who killed their seals. Udanos is raped in a vision by daughter Dawn. The Sengar brothers learn that their god is dead. Well, not necessarily dead, but yes.
Physically dead.
Yes, his body was destroyed.
This chapter started off with a bang, and it was creepy. The sorcery and everything on the ships. It was great.
Very
Yeah.
Lovecraft.
Yeah.
I like the end because they were like, "Hey, we got this big secret. Your god's dead."
Yeah,
And
I
this is
like
his skull.
how
It was creepy.
the women knew basically the entire time, and they
Right.
just kind of like allowed this myth around Father Shadow to creep up because I don't actually know their reasoning, but they allowed it.
And Troll, I believe it's Troll, is like suspicious about their Warlock King. Like, is he really calling the shots? I don't think
He's a
he is.
suspicious dude.
Very
Yes.
suspicious because Hanan Mosag told them it was going to be Curled Emerlon that killed these people, and it
Right.
very wasn't.
But that scene between Daughter Dawn and Udanas, I'm just like, what? What is the point of this?
Rapho?
Yeah. Also, Steve hates Udanas and wants him to suffer.
Okay.
Probably true. That would explain everything.
Yeah, right? He has such an unfortunate time.
Okay. I'll keep reading. We spend quite a bit of time, like, kind of learning the Sengar family history. I found it not to my liking. It's like, I don't care.
I think it's important to establish Edo culture more. But yeah, like when you're establishing two really important cultures in one book, it can get to be a lot. Obviously, like the Lethari, the Lethari and the Eater are both. They would demand a lot of page time.
So I said earlier that these first chapters, I actually like Rulad the most of all the brothers, and it's just because I think he's so sad. So like at one point, like Troll literally says to him, "Stop strutting before man," and then after he goes away sulking, he says, "The lots of these words are anything but loose." Troll drew a deep breath, let it out slowly, wondered at that smile, the peculiarity of it, a smile that might have been pain, a smile born of hurt. I don't know. I just felt bad for the guy.
Yeah, I get it, but at the same time, and then like he kind of,
Deserved it.
well, a bit.
I mean,
But
I
it's
don't
also
disagree.
it's also like well, okay. I acknowledge that we are likely getting a very biased reading of Rulad because we're seeing most of it through Troll's perspective.
Yeah.
And Troll tells us that, before Mayan was betrothed to Fear, like Rulad didn't care about her.
Yeah.
And then after the betrothal, thank you, words. Then that's when Rulad started caring, right? So if that is true, then Rulad is
That's a good point. He
poophead.
just wants what his older brother has.
Very much.
Yeah.
I want to play with my brother's toys.
Yeah, it's what that defined his character. He's always been. He's a little brother. He just wants what his brother. He wants to be his older brothers.
He also has a massive insecurity complex because he's the only
does.
one that is yet unblooded.
And he's constantly reminded of it.
Yeah.
The word unblooded was used so many times in that first chapter.
It's an important concept in their culture.
And later he's talking all big, and his father shut him up quickly, and it was just sad.
Yeah. Well, so in House of Chains, we know that one of Troll's brothers was the one that betrayed him and like had him shorn.
I think it was all of his brothers actually.
Oh, okay. But there was one in particular that was pretty vicious, and I think it's Rulad.
Thumbs up. Not a confirmation.
Confirmation.
Just a thumbs up.
An acknowledgement.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Quotes?
I have one. Old men and the dead were the first whisperers of the word vengeance. Old men and the dead stood at the same wall, and while the dead faced it, old men held their backs to it. Beyond that wall was oblivion. They spoke from the end times, and both knew a need to lead the young onto identical paths, if only to give meaning to all they had known and all they had done.
It's so true.
Because, yeah, it's... You have Rulad who's... okay, Eater culture is a warrior culture, obviously. But the blooded warriors, who aren't super old, they don't worship war, really. They kind of just acknowledge that it's a necessary thing. That's not awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But Rulad is like, I want the glory. I want to be treated as an equal. And I am willing to bet that he got those ideas from the old warriors in his tribe.
Yep.
You want to share, Jasna?
Sure. Perhaps that is the truth of madness, when a mind can do nothing but make endless lists of the mundane tasks awaiting it as proof of its sanity. Mend those nets, wind those strands. See, I have not lost the meaning of my life. And as somebody who has tried to not go crazy a couple of times while on psychedelics, that's exactly what you do to try to prove that. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I gotta drink this water, do this thing, and you just kind of like go into this like endless repetition of the same series of tasks, and you're like, eventually I'll get out of this if I just keep doing these things. It's real.
That is not where I thought you were going to take that.
This book has so many fantastic lines.
Yeah, It to me, it's the one with the most best lines since Gardens.
I love the lines in Gardens.
Lines and Gardens are really good.
My quote. I got a ton, but I'm going to share one. Why not worship money? At least its rewards are obvious and immediate. But no, that was simplistic. Letheri worship was more subtle, its ethics bound to those traits and habits that well serve the acquisition of wealth. Diligence, discipline, hard work, optimism, the personalization of glory, and the corresponding evils, sloth, despair, and the anonymity of failure. The world was brutal enough to winnow one of the other and leave no room for doubt or merely equivocation. In this way, worship could become pragmatism, and pragmatism was a cold god.
And it is. It's
I noted
just
that too.
business. I actually feel like we would be remiss without talking a bit about some of the world building that's done here. So when they get to Father Shadow's shattered skull, Fear tells them a bit about the history of the K'chain Shamal and what they did in retaliation to Mother Dark. Essentially, they doomed the entire universe and condemned Mother Dark to a slow death out of sheer spite, which is quite the... It's not what I would think an act to be done by cold-blooded lizard men, right? Like, this feels really hateful. And also, shattered dragon skull. And what shattered the dragon skull? Apparently, an elder god named Kilmandaros. That's a new name.
Well, new as of the prologue.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, his spirit was taken and imprisoned somewhere. Ooh.
Oh. Is that the ice spear? Okay.
I can't answer that.
No, yep. I have a quote going back to the economic theming. Debt was its own language, within which were used words like negotiation, compensation, and justification. And legality was a sign of duplicity that blinded the eyes of justice. And this, just reading that line, it reminded me of, there's this book called Debt for Sale, A Social History of the Credit Trap by Brett Williams. And she is a professor of anthropology at American University. And in Debt for Sale, Williams lays out how the American economy became a debt-based economy and how Americans adapted to debt-financed lifestyles. Some of the criticisms of the book is that it's not very objective. Basically, it takes too socialist of a view. And I'm like, well, I think these criticisms kind of miss the mark a bit because this is a social history. Like, it's literally in the title of the book. And it acknowledges that it's taking a look at the issue of debt economy through a very particular lens. Anyway, I think it's an insightful read, and it's something that has stayed with me for over a decade. And I do wonder if Erickson has read it. I mean, the book was published after this book was, but or actually maybe it was around the same time, just a couple years of each other. So if you're interested in learning some very depressing things,
That
and
was
the concept
amazing.
of
That was the best
debt.
thing I've ever heard.
Thank you for elevating the podcast. We can now
Okay.
think of ourselves as a bit more bougie.
I mean, debt itself is it's a concept that it's not a recent concept, right? It's definitely goes all the way back since humans existed, really.
Yeah, it's like fundamental to human society and interaction.
But then that does, put forth that we live in a zero-sum world.
We live in a society.
Mm.
No, sorry, I don't mean to be condescending. That is a good point.
And I mean, I think about this a lot. It's just like, even at like micro levels, just my in my own personal life. And I think it's because we know that our time on Earth is finite, right? So everything, and this is a terrible way to live, so I don't encourage this for anyone. Everything that I do, the decisions that I make, right, where I'm spending my time, I'm like, oh, that's taking away from something else that I could be doing.
And I know a lot of people who think about social interaction purely in terms of essentially debts owed.
Right.
So, like, there's a lot of people who don't like getting gifts because they think now that they owe the person that gave them the gift, and they feel bad if they don't give one back of like equal monetary value. But like, that's not what gift giving is supposed to be about, right? So it's
debatable. But yes, depending on the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of human behaviors that we can just take way too far and have been taken way too far in society. Like my least favorite example, tribalism, which is, I think, the result of the root of almost all human evil. But that's a discussion for another time, probably.
Yeah,
I'm good to go. Chapter 4. Tehel continues plotting and gathering resources like a Tarthnal named Ublalapang. He also recruits an undead thief, Shirk, to steal Gedstriflin Eberict's
Eberickt!
Shirk worries about an undead child living near the Azath Tower, feeding it blood and bodies.
Hey, it's not easy to spell Garen Eberickt without the book.
Garen Eberickt is such an interesting character.
Yeah. Let's get Panda and Yasna's thoughts about Garen Eberickt.
Yes,
that's the guy with the king's
leave.
Pass. Yeah.
Cannot be prosecuted.
Yeah. Interesting. Seems like a dangerous guy.
He engineered the situation that led him to get that as well.
Or so Tehel thinks.
Yeah, so Tehel thinks.
Well, yeah.
I'm inclined to believe Tehel.
That's pretty wild, man. That's some like 5D chess stuff.
He also messed up his teeth.
You're right.
Oh, he's a villain.
Huh?
When he stopped the sword or dagger from the assassin
in his mouth. Oh,
yeah.
That's such an awful image.
I was like mentally living through that, and I just it's kind of like nails on chalkboard kind of thing.
Whenever there's a blade in someone's mouth ever, that's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about Garen Eberickt, Panda?
That conniving dude. I mean, he is pretty funny in ways, but also very suspicious. But there is one part where I'm like, okay, there's got to be more to this character, because when Bryce, I'm sorry, I just can't pronounce these things. When he didn't finish his meal, and Garen tells him
that story.
What?
It was after a quite gruesome story, wasn't it?
Oh yes.
Like, yeah, I think I'm okay.
Garen tells Briss to give his meal to a lad in the alley.
Starving lad.
And it's like, okay, well, one, who is this person in the alley? And two, why is Garen telling him to go feed this person?
It's an act of charity.
But see, the thing is, this character doesn't seem like he would be that charitable.
I mean, is every person who commits charitable acts just like have the sun shining out of their rear end? I'm sure there's a lot of people who do a lot of charity who are awful, terrible people.
True. I mean,
in real life, at least. I mean, not maybe as much in fiction, but in the real world.
It's just like this character was painted in such a way where, it doesn't seem like this is a good morally good character. So that's why I'm saying I think there's more to this character because of this one part.
Yeah, we don't actually have a clue to his motivations yet, essentially, because he's on a crusade.
Yeah.
We don't know what it is. He's killed some very important people.
Maybe the crusade is pretty justified.
Maybe. The thing I noticed most about him is that he's very charismatic. Like even Briss, when he's talking to him, is like, am I actually going to like this man? And he ends up liking him, essentially. And
I like how they're planning this, trip to the Eater, and they're sending him along only for the reason to get him out of the city.
Yeah.
Right.
And he seems to have a very ironclad notion of justice just from this chapter, because, as you said, he gives a meal to a starving child, but then says, "Return the plate."
Right. Yeah. I do like how he jokes a little bit with Briss about whether or not, like who's on the list that he has. Just kidding.
You know how he comes across.
So I want to talk about Saren. She was very upset about the interaction between Hull and Benedus. And I was just like, why are you so upset? And it seems it's more because of her own insecurities, where she doesn't feel like she really belongs, and for her to have connections and relationships with other people, it's more effort for her, and so she's just jealous of how easy Hull and Benedus were able to just connect, I guess. Anyway,
I think a lot of it is also that she doesn't understand kind of like unspoken bonds where you don't talk to each other. Because when she has friends, she likes to talk to them, which I think is a fair thing.
It's just a personality thing, sounds like.
Reminds me of Ron Swanson.
She seemed to equate it as differences between men and women and the gender differences.
She did, which bothers me a bit.
You disagree? Well, her conclusion was, let me try to find it. A woman looks on a cobbled beach. A man looks down and sees one rock, then another and another, and a woman looks down and sees rocks. But perhaps even this is simplistic. Man is a singular, and woman is plural. More likely, we are bits of both, some of one and the other. We just don't like admitting it. So at the beginning, she seemed to be equating these differences to the difference between men and women and how they interact with the same sex, I guess, and the opposite sex. But then at the end, she's like, this might just be a personal thing, and really, men and women aren't so different.
Yeah.
We're just kind of the feminine and the masculine are.
She just talks herself out of her own biases.
I will say my experience has been I've only really observed friendships where people don't talk really in men. This might be incorrect because it's reasoning by analogy, but I have lots of male friends that I don't when we get together, we don't really have a conversation. We can say maybe 10 words to each other and then go our own separate ways, and that's a good experience for me. But when I have female friends, it's usually a lot more dialogue based.
Anecdotally, that's the same for me. Most of my male friends, we don't talk about anything unless it's pretty shallow. But when I get a cup of coffee with my women friends, that we really talk about a lot of things and various things. We talk and talk. Again, anecdotal, so I don't know.
For me, it's based on mood.
I'm the one that has to talk and talk all the time, so but it's not just, in my experience, it's not been just whether the men will talk. It's what they're willing to talk. And there's often chatter and pop culture stuff and shared interests and hobbies, which of course women will talk about as well, but there's a reticence amongst many men that I've met to talk about insecurities or vulnerabilities or emotions, or to get in depth on personal stuff.
Scary. Because it's scary.
Right. Which is, for a while I was like, oh, I just don't get along with men, but then I realized that I was overgeneralizing, and that's not true.
Yeah,
just like Saren.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also just depending on the friends, I mean, basically what Jasnah said, like what you're willing to talk about and what connections you have that will determine the conversations you're going to have. I'm a fairly private person, so
Really?
I'm I don't talk a lot about like myself in terms of what I'm going through or how I'm really feeling. Sometimes, actually, a lot of times what I'm feeling, just there are other ways for people to know. Usually through body language.
I do think it's somewhat significant, though, that on the server, the only time I've really noticed people getting together to chat was with you, Red, and Lady Sweden, just kind of getting together to drink wine, I think. And
I mean, that happened like once or twice, but...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, again, anecdotal.
Yes. Yeah. There's no... I don't know of any rigorous studies on this.
And it's all ad hoc, right, as well, so, yeah.
Back to the drownings.
Upalapong's
got a big dong.
Yeah, I made a list of things that I noted about him. He's a Tarthanol.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And he apparently likes to urinate in public.
He's not very bright.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's... I mean, I've only gotten a little bit of this character. It seems like he's pretty shy. He also has 4 lungs, which is why he can walk across the canal. Yeah, and big dick, like literal big dick.
I find it so funny, and I think this is probably going to be polarizing humor. I find it hilarious that it seems like every woman in the city is just obsessed with big dicks. Because obviously this isn't the case in real life, right? But they all look at it like they're just fascinated.
Yeah.
To me, this really feels like Erickson being very poking a lot of fun at the male conception that size is very, very important.
Yeah, there's even the mention of like, oh yeah, there are these surgeons that
you can graft this.
Oh man. I mean, I'm sorry, dudes. Big, small, whatever, as long as you know how to use it.
It's the motion of the ocean.
All motion being equal, size is better than not. So.
And moving on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go cry.
Sorry.
There's a dying Azath house in this
tower
chapter.
Thing? Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah. We've only seen houses so far. This is a tower, and it's dying.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't they say this was
really,
the
really
first ever Azath?
That's what they said, yeah.
I think it's the first structure in the realm.
And it seems like the bodies are like escaping out of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Did it also come from an acorn?
Maybe.
Who knows?
That's kind of terrifying because that's almost like worse than if the Azath house like never ate the things in the first place. Because they're all gonna get out like in a different time and in a different context, and there might not be anyone around to deal with it.
And we also get an upper bound on the age of an Azath. Seems about 400,000 years or so. Because that's how long ago the prologue was. And Scabby was like, I'm going to put you in something that's going to keep you stuck, essentially.
That doesn't mean the Azath house was born then. That means it existed already 400,000 years ago.
I think he says that it's...
I also don't know why it's dying.
Yeah. That is true. We don't know why it's dying.
And 5 Toblakai are trying to escape.
And that's how chapter 5 ends.
Oh, really? Whoops.
No, you're right. That's he says, thus I will take you to a suitable place and leave you to the roots, earth, and stone of its mangled grounds. Look at that.
No, that's the end of chapter 4.
Is it?
And there are... Huh? What scene is chapter 4?
Oh, we're replaying
the end. 5 Toblakai are trying to escape the Azath.
Yeah. Sounds like a recipe for trouble. The Azath house has made a bargain with something. One of the entities.
A bug is a mage?
Yes, we learned that.
He also knows some structural engineering.
He does. And Teal makes good use of that knowledge, or is going to.
He hired him because of his He saw that he had a great aptitude for uselessness.
He discovered him when he was embalming his parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just love their interaction so much. I want a whole chapter of it. Like a long chapter of it.
You missed a line, Ash. She says, that was Bug. That was where I first met him and saw immediately his lack of potential.
There you go.
I think the last thing I'll say here is like the whole thing about Turble, which is a terrible name. Anyway, just we got insight into how good T-Hole is about the scheming, you know. So I really enjoyed that.
Same.
Should we move on to quotes then?
Oh, I thought we already did.
Oh, okay, then I'll share mine. Tail stared at the woolen trousers, then reached for them. Tell me, Bug, is there a point in you continuing? Do you mean these leggings or my sorry existence?
Yeah, just their conversation, and it's like they have multiple threads of conversation going on at once, right? And I did not find it hard to follow. I found it super entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't talked about Shirk.
Or Kettle.
Or Kettle.
I like Shirk.
Yeah. I like how she doesn't want to be resurrected. She wants to be given the semblance of life.
That's good enough, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And like there are perks to being undead.
Except don't make her laugh.
Don't make her laugh. Things will come out.
Get an infectious laugh.
Oh, that was an hilarious exchange.
Yeah.
It almost felt like Erickson was challenging me not to laugh.
Or Cam.
Or Cam, yeah. Yeah, it's really funny, the concept of buying curses for your enemies. Yeah. She would have made it across the canal, except for...
Yeah. Except for that stupid fish. Kettle just wants a mom.
Kettle's so sad and scary.
And why is she named Kettle?
The way she kills people is horrifying.
She likes the taste of blood.
She likes the taste of... And it mats her hair, so it gets kept out of her face.
Which, like, girl, there are other ways.
That's what I use. I didn't know there were other ways.
Okay.
It's like sliced bread. The concept just hasn't been invented yet.
Didn't you know that gel, the first version of gel, was just blood? Gelatinous blood.
Oh, was it?
No.
Well, I could believe that.
That sounded so real.
I was gonna think like either lard or gel.
I think
I made that up. Oh my god. Okay.
That sounds difficult to get in large enough quantities to put in all your hair. I don't know.
Semen?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not that hard.
Oh, speaking of puns, Ablala is like 3 women makes it hard.
I know. I read that part. And I was like, I see what
I was like, I
there.
noticed.
I did not catch the pun.
Oh. Yeah, just be ready for lots of sexual humor with Ablala.
How did he come up with the name?
They had to have been fooling around one day. They're like, what are we gonna name this guy? He's like, what about Ablala?
It's good. Let's move on to the last chapter.
Yes.
Yes.
Chapter 5. Udanos gets a new shadow and has a few nightmares. Suren Padak and her caravan see a ghost and arrive at the Eater town. The Sengars share a family meal.
I liked the meal scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was tense.
It was really tense, and the father really laid it into Rilad, and Rilad was really humiliated, and Man seemed to get enjoyment out of that. She had malice in her eyes, but at the same time, she felt a lot of compassion for Udanos. And Udanos seemed to have some trauma, because when he heard the name, like, Menendore, who raped him earlier, he drops everything, and
his hands are skinned.
Yeah, because he had that weird vision earlier.
Mm-hmm. And he gets mind raped.
Yeah. He's not having
that
a
poor
good time.
dude, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not really jealous.
Of what?
Udanos.
No, not at all.
Even on top of everything else, even on top of being a slave, he's the lower class of slave.
I know. Featherwitch is like, I can't marry you, or whatever.
You were as well wet a wet rat, is what she said.
Oh
God, she's so mean.
She's so mean.
I liked meeting up with our albino Teist friend.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
The apparition.
This book dips its toes into horror more than the other Malazan books as well.
Really?
Oh, you don't think the apparition and all those mice and kettle are horror themed?
I mean, I
think
do,
they're
but
horror-themed.
more than the Salanda, more than
The
like the
Salanda is probably the other one that's spooky.
well. And what about
Let's see.
there was this bunch of stuff in Gardens that was like that.
I don't recall that at the moment.
It's like the haunted place in that alley that they said all the wraiths and monsters
Oh.
live.
The Tower Belfry.
Kroll's Belfry, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, the blood flies too. The blood flies were pretty horror.
Yeah, that was horrific.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a lot of horror in these books.
What we're all trying to say is, Ashaman, you're wrong.
I reject
But
that
what else is
assertion.
I
Oh,
do
man.
think that this horror is very good, but I don't know if I think it's like necessarily more so than any other one.
I feel persecuted.
Oh,
This is unfair and, frankly, a travesty.
Oh, and the
Steve would be
Tenniscowry.
embarrassed of all you.
The Tenniscowry.
Tenniscowry are pretty...
They're terrifying.
No, I'm just trying to think about like what genre of horror I would classify them in. I would say this is very gothic horror in this book,
Okay.
which I think is more unique. Yeah, the apparition. I love that scene. That scene is so good.
I love Udinas's visions, even though they're confusing. I love them.
They are
even
great.
the red
That was
one.
good, yeah.
It was interesting.
It was good
Okay.
writing.
It was jarring.
There was also more to it than that.
There was
Like-
more to it than that. Yes.
It was just very jarring.
He also has a shadow.
He does.
And
Yeah.
These
Yeah, Wiggle.
shadows are wraiths left over from the Teist Andy.
The
Mhm.
eater pretend that they're eater.
Yeah.
And
What's
they're
up
the
with
ghosts
that?
of Eater Past.
You would think they would go to a hood, right?
Well, can't they not? Because they're like, I don't actually know the reason, but they're serving the eater because they have to.
They do have to. They are not consulted, unfortunately.
I don't know.
The Hanan Mosag guy is pretty creepy.
He has a shadow of his own.
Playing with the
Mhm.
dark arts, basically.
Yup.
The Lothari do make the Malazan seem like nice conquerors, though.
They do, don't they?
Yeah, like when we were starting off with Gardens, it was very much like, and Dead House Gates was like, oh, the Malazan Empire is brutal, blah blah blah. And now I'm like, I would rather take the Malazans.
Yeah. The Malazan Empire is so ambiguous in its morality.
Well, isn't the Malazan Empire kind of modeled on the Roman and Byzantine empires, and like the Lothari is like the United States?
That's
I
pretty apt comparison, I think.
I believe Steve mentioned that it was modeled more after the British Empire, the Lothari. But there's no one-to-one comparison. It's not like he took an empire from the real world and just transplanted it into...
Well, yeah,
right?
but
Like
at
there
least-
are a lot of important differences.
I was just saying, I think that the Lothari way of thinking really resembles the American, I don't know, something similar to the Manifest Destiny or certain American, I can't really think of it, exceptionalism.
right, yeah, and well, and not only that, but the tribes, all the different tribes, including the Edo, are supposed to be like representative of indigenous American tribes, right? So that's why I went to America for the Lothari.
Yeah, the British, also known for their attitudes towards tribal people.
Oh well, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
but because of the Edo like parallel with the Sioux, I was going with like who were their closest imperial enemy, the United
I think
States.
they're both apt comparisons. I'll see if I can find what Steve said about it.
Do you know how the Eater are based on the Sioux?
I know there's like some famous battle, and there's some other things that might be a spoiler for Panda if I said them that I kind of know because Steve mentioned them in certain interviews. But yeah, I don't want to say.
I like how there's an explanation for why the spooky Ghost Man hasn't gone insane yet because he's allowed time away from his prison because Mother Dark gave him at least that much.
Quotes. Who wants to start? Panda.
I have two. So this was from Hull. The division between life and death was measured in incremental jostling for position amidst all devouring progress. No one could afford compassion. Accordingly, none expected it from others either. And it just made me think a little bit like, compassion is a big theme. And we say that, well, Erickson posits that there's no price. Like, it's not like you deserve compassion necessarily. Compassion should just be given. But I think there is a bit of a perspective that giving compassion may also be a privilege. Like it's easier to be compassionate when you yourself are not in suffering. And like, does compassion have a cost? Even if we say like it should be given freely, though, like the act of giving compassion, is there a cost for the giver?
Yeah,
That's great. Thank you, Panda.
I think it's in one of the previous books, but one of the characters mentioned that to take on someone else's viewpoint is a really heavy thing to do. It takes a lot out of you, which is why most people don't do it, right? It's a lot easier to just kind of stay in your own little bubble and not worry about the suffering of others.
Yeah. I mean, look at Akovian. If he didn't have Fenner's power and strength, right? Like, you can only take on so much.
Mm-hmm.
Other people have quotes?
It's when they meet the apparition. A dragon, the apparition said in the language of the Teist, once dragged itself down this trail. No forest back then, naught but devastation. Blood in the broken earth. The dragon, mortal, made this trail. Do you feel this? Beneath you, the scattering of a memory that pushes the roots away, that bows the trees to either side. A dragon. I thought that was I thought that was so cool. Was Ruin talking about himself in that scene, apparition? Was he the dragon that fell and made the trail?
Wait, okay, hold on a second. So, do you think the apparition is Ruin?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so too, but then I wasn't so sure after reading this part. And I was like,
He's
wait,
got the
is
two
this...
empty scabbards. He's an albino Taistandee. He's a ghost.
Okay.
I mean, what?
Okay. So, sorry, I had a moment where I was like, wait, am I thinking this wrong? It's not Ruin? But yes, it is. Okay.
I think so.
I think so too.
If not, that I think Erickson's trying to let us think it is. But
yeah.
Like the signal to the reader is at least.
Okay. So then an answer to your question then is yes.
You think the dragon is that he's referring to as himself?
Yeah.
He's like, isn't that awesome, mortal? It was a dragon.
I'm so cool.
I'm so cool. My death made this trail. I love I love that so many of the dragons are soul taken in this series.
I want more dragons.
I think the only true dragon we've seen so far is Solana. Is that right?
Yes.
We don't know that for sure.
She's the red dragon, right?
The only confirmed true dragon.
Yes.
Yeah, because we don't know.
Other candidates you can think of?
Fiddler's dragons are not known to me to be either soul taken or Elaine from the end of Deadhouse Gates.
Yeah, I don't remember those.
What? It was this huge moment. They were in the Azath travel map, and Fiddler looks up and he sees the dragons flying over, and they're like totally indifferent to him, and he's like,
Oh, right.
Oh, we're so self-centered. We think we're the center of the universe, but here's a life form that's like so above us they don't even care. And it was like this big existential moment at the end.
Yes, I remember now that you said it. But before that, no, I did not remember. I don't have any more notes.
Me neither.
We do have listener questions.
Oh, yes. Okay, we're going to have to go through them pretty quickly. I gotta go.
Okay, listener question 1 from The Solution. Why is Tehol and Bug the worst characters? What's your least favorite thing about them, and how mad did this question make you?
Well, okay, so Tell and Bug, this is just Erickson trying to do comedy, and it feels really forced. While also, Tell clearly author self-insert. Bug is probably representative of his wife and their relationship. I think this outs him as a very toxic man. So, like, I'm going to be boycotting the series after this.
Oh my god.
The question didn't piss me off, but Ashaman's answer did. So congratulations, Soul.
I guess that's the end of this podcast.
Does anybody actually want to answer this question, or just want to everyone give the camera the middle finger to Soul?
I think for listeners who don't know, Solution is a big troll on the Discord server. So
Roll prostitute.
Yeah, but his troll
my
has
God.
failed utterly. Bring Eridanus in to really troll.
All right, so cannon fodder. Apart from the few characters in the prologue and in chapter 1 that we have already seen, which character first clicked for each of you, meaning which made you think, oh, this person interests me? Jasnah?
Apart from the prologue, they said.
Yeah, and the first few characters in chapter 1.
aside from the characters we already met and knew about, I think is what
Yes.
Cannon
Yeah,
Fodder's
I
saying.
think that's
Table.
what means. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Panda?
Well, so I met Udanos first before I met Teol. So technically it would be Udanos, but I really like Teol and Bug.
Ash?
Yeah, Udanos and Tehol are probably the ones that stand out the most. Maybe
concur.
the Warlock King. He's a interesting guy.
Ash and Hurin, which book do you guess will be Jasnah and Panda's favorite in the 10 books?
I have given up on understanding Panda's tastes.
I think this will definitely be Jasnah's favorite.
Maybe
Really?
maybe Panda will like Reaper's Gale the most. Maybe Bone Hunters. Probably Bone Hunters. I'm thinking Bone Hunters.
I think Panda might like Bone Hunters the most, yeah.
Isn't
I
that the
think-
one that's like 2 books in one?
Yeah.
All right, better be a good book.
It's
Yeah, but
Well,
definitely very
it's-
fast paced.
It's
Lots of
heavily
Malazans.
military, right, as well. And she likes military stuff.
I think Told the Hounds for Jasnah.
Toll the Hounds.
I think Told the Hounds.
that one's my favorite.
Well, we'll
Yeah.
know whether Huron's right, at least temporarily right.
With
My
Midnight
favorite
Tides.
so far is House of Chains, so if I don't like it better than House of Chains.
Told the Hounds is a very polarizing book.
People love it. People don't love it. Yes.
The definition of polarizing.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Ashaman.
I'm just making sure our listeners are following along with these complicated words.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
Then Floppish asks, having not seen much of Teist societies, what is your impression of the Eater Society, and do you think it is representative of the Teist as a whole? Also, assuming the prologue is from not too recent past, what do you think of the technological state of the Eater tribes? Do you all think the Eater Society is influenced by Western idea of the noble savage?
Okay, these are really good questions.
Yeah,
I
they're
am
great.
not smart
Prepared for
enough
these.
to answer some of these.
I think that the Eater are both representative and not representative of the rest of the Teist, based on what we've seen so far.
What an answer.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to elaborate on it. I think the Eater, the Teist all share an arrogance to them.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, and I think that's the greatest similarity between them, and I think it's probably all of their fatal flaws.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially the Leosans, as we've seen last book.
Yes, except, like for them, it's such an extreme that it's comical.
Yes.
For the Eater, it's like a little pathetic. And for the Andy, it's like so cool.
The Andy, they don't even really have a society anymore. There's so few of them.
Well, yes. But, I mean, we see part of why, because these freaking Eaters, killed a bunch of them.
That's what I was about to say.
That was a separate contingent, right?
Still.
Yeah.
Impression of the Eater Society. That's my answer.
I like it.
Yeah, I think it's.
I think from an anthropological perspective, it's very interesting. But I mean, it's they literally have 3 times as many slaves as they have citizens, and that's just messed up.
Oh yeah,
And
not healthy.
that's why I don't think it's influenced by the idea of the West noble savage, because most of the time when people talk about noble savages, they're like, oh, aren't these people so pure, and we should save them from this and that. And I mean, the Eater obviously have lots of problems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's probably normal for societies based on exploitation for the exploited to outnumber the exploiters. But the fact that it's like the tribe, not all the tribe are citizens, and all the slaves are from warfare and conquest. It's like two different peoples. It's not one people divided. I mean, they're not even the same species, right? So that makes it even more stark and kind of precarious than having like once. I mean, not that class antagonists are ever not precarious, right? But it's more obvious, it's more stark, it's more precarious.
I think this clearly indicates that the Eater are the ones modeled after the United States. Obviously.
I mean, I bet the indebted in the Theory Society are far outnumber people that don't have any debt and are like nobles or merchants.
I was thinking just like the stratification between slaves and the other people, and the slaves outnumbering, because I don't know if you guys have read up in your history books, but the South sure did that a lot.
Yeah, no, we have no idea about that.
I think we should call the episode. Last thoughts?
Okay. I don't hate this book.
Oh, what a relief.
As of yet.
Oh my god.
He's leaving it open.
What a terrible way to end the episode.
I'm just kidding.
I don't hate it yet.
What I will say is, like, I am more excited about continuing this book than I was, after House of Chains, like immediately after House of Chains.
Excellent.
I think you'll enjoy the next few chapters.
Mm-hmm. That's what I hear. Like, here's the thing. Book 1 it's a lot of setup, right? And I'm like, okay, I get it. I need to like be patient and read through this, and they'll pay off later in the book.
Oh boy, will it.
I'm excited.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Oh, I kind of want to get Yasa's thoughts too on the first book. So.
Oh, I mean, I love it. So
okay,
yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm enjoying the Letheri chapters more, but I'm more interested in finding out what happens in learning more about the Eater and like seeing what happens in the chapters. Like the Letheri chapters are more fun, but like I came to this book and wanting the Eater stuff, and I still want it.
I agree.
Yeah, the mysteries on the Eater side are more interesting, but we kept getting teases, That concludes this episode. If you want to join the read-along and or contribute listener questions, check us out on the Legendarium's Discord. You can find the link on thelegendarium.com. Also, follow us on Twitter at GreenTeamPod for updates and fun times. Check out the Legendarium podcast for Wheel of Time, Cosmere, Lord of the Rings content, and so much more. Thank you to our panelists, Ashaman, JasnahAsABoy, and Hurinfan. I'm BefuddledPanda. Until next time. Bye. Pew, 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 pew.
See ya.
Exactly.
I forgot how to say goodbye in Spanish.
Adios.
Adios.
Sayonara.
Adios.